introduced to the history and the preservation of the Quran. What happened during Muhammad's time? What happened post his time? How they decided which Quran to choose, which one not to choose, how many Qurans were all over the place during that time. So one of the things very interesting to know is that well, first let me start by saying that Quran is called recitations, and we see no evidence that Muhammad ever wanted the Quran to be compiled into a single book. Here's the common sense: in 23 years of his revelations, he did not attempt to put it into a single book, so he never wanted it. We also see a comment from Abu Bakr in the famous Hadith, Bukhari 4986, that where he's being asked to compile the Quran for the first time. He is the brand new caliph. Muhammad that just died, and there's a lot of there's a war going on, and he's losing a lot of people who memorize the Quran by heart. Abu Bakr side. And when he's approached and told that, look, I'm afraid we're going to lose. We've got more battles to come, and we're going to lose these guys, and then we won't have anybody to, remember the Quran or anything like that, or be able to recite it. We better put this into a book. His first reaction was like, how are you asking me to do something that Muhammad never asked me to do? So that tells you that this process of putting into a book was something Muhammad never wanted. And everything Muhammad wanted was through God. So conceivably, Allah never wanted to put it in a book. He just wanted people to memorize it. Now, let's continue here. What we're going to do is kind of introduce you to Mr. Muhammad and his people who he taught the Quran. As you know, he taught several people, maybe thousands of people the Quran, right? He's taught lots of people the Quran. Okay. Now, among all of those people, he thought there were four of them that were the best of the best. The creme de la creme. Okay? And he talks about them in a hadith number 3758. In Hadith 3758, he says, Abdullah bin Masud was mentioned before Abdullah bin Amr. The latter said that this is a man I continue to love because I heard Allah's messenger saying, learn the recitation of the Quran from any of these four persons. Abdullah bin Masud, i.e. Ibn Masud, Salim, the freed slave of Abu Hudayfa, Uday bin Kaab, that's Ubay bin Kaab, and Maud bin Jabal. I do not remember whether he mentioned Ubay first or Maud first. So in this hadith, it's saying that Ibn Masud was the first person he mentioned as to learn it from out of the four people, and then it was in all probability Ubay bin Kaab. But there are four people they've identified that Muhammad says if you want to read the Quran, if you want to learn the Quran rather from anybody, learn it from these four. This is a very important hadith, guys. It's an extremely important hadith. Okay. Now, as we continue to discover about the history of the Quran, we realize that Ubay bin Kaab wrote his own Quran or Mus'haf. They call it a Mus'haf, which is a book. Essentially, it's a skeleton or a rasam. What it basically means is that at that time, they never had any vowelization or diacritical marks, as we call it. The dots and the dashes and all that other stuff. They didn't have it. So we learned that Ubay bin Kaab, one of the four, wrote his own Mus'haf, own Quran. And in his Quran, it was 116 chapters. Then we learned that Ibn Masud wrote his own Quran. And Ibn Masud was from Baghdad, by the way. And he wrote his own Quran, and it was 111 chapters. And then we learn about another Sahaba named Ibn Musa, who was out of Basra, and he wrote his own Quran, and that was 114 chapters. Similar numbers in what people have today, but not same content. But we'll talk about that a little later. And then finally we learn that Zayd bin Thabit compiled the Quran in 114 chapters from Abu Bakr and then Uthman. Okay? So note that Mr. Kaab is from Damascus, Syria. Mr. Masud is from Baghdad, Iraq. Mr. Musa is from Basra, Iraq. And so is Zayd bin Thabit. Note there were at least 5 Qurans in the 7th century from Medina, Mecca, Basra, Kufa, and Damascus. And we don't even have one of them today. Okay? But later on, we get these qirats that begin to be introduced in the mid to late 7th century into the 8th century. And that's what you have is called the Hafs Quran. Okay? Anyways. Alright. Now, in fact, it is well known that Ibn Masud's codex, far from being for his personal use only, was widely used in the region where he was based, and just as Ubay bin Kaab's codex became the standard text in Syria before Uthman's recension or Uthman's Quran. So Ibn Masud likewise became the standard text for Muslim Ummah in and around Kufa in Iraq. Okay? So in the famous hadith of Uthman, it talks about Uthman's army who is fighting against Azerbaijan and Armenia way on top, thousands of miles away from Mecca, that they're fighting them up there. That army was made up of people from Sham, Syria, and people from Iraq. And when they used to go to the mosque and hear each other recite the Quran, they used to fight, they used to come to blows, they wanted to unalive each other because each side said, you're narrating it completely different than us. So there we know, and in some other scholarship it tells you also, that the people of Iraq, they were reading Ibn Masud's Mus'haf. And people of Sham, Syria, were reading Ubay bin Kaab's Mus'haf. And so they were clashing because both the Mus'hafs were wrong. Now, Ibn Masud and Ubay bin Kaab, among the 4, are the ones, are like the big daddy of the 4 group, as far as scholars go. They're the top among the 4 also. And actually, Ibn Masud, you would say, is like the king among the 4. All right, just to give you a background, that's what Muhammad was saying. Muhammad just loved those guys. Okay, so here is where we are now going to show you. We're going to go into evidence to show you that Ibn Masud and Ibn bin Kaab were really the best of the reciters. My headset is dying, so let me just switch real quick. Let's see. Test. Can you guys hear me? Chat, can you hear me? Let me know. Chat, can you hear me? I don't know what you guys are doing out there, dude. Can you guys hear me or not? Let me see. I'll test it. Okay, great. All right, thank you. All right, so guys, now we're going to show you proof that Muhammad said Ibn Masud and Ubay bin Kaab were the best of reciters. Here's why we're taking you here. You know, Uthman never invited those guys. Abu Bakr never invited those guys. When they were compiling the Quran in their name, Abu Bakr's Quran, Uthman's Quran, they ignored Muhammad saying these are my top 4 guys and that these 2 are the creme de la creme and Ibn Masud is my favorite. They don't invite them. This you will start seeing very soon becomes problematic. So the process of compiling the Quran and putting the Quran together is very political, as I said. It's all about, getting the caliph's name on it. They don't care that the top guys that Muhammad has said, if you want to learn from, to ask them to come and join them. They don't care the top two have been not asked to come and join the committees. They don't care about that stuff. They're more bothered about, I'm going to control my own community and it'll be known as Abu Bakr's Quran, Uthman's Quran. That's what they're worried about. Which is very telling about this being a completely man-made, egotistical book. Okay, now, Muhammad said that Ibn Masud recited the Quran perfectly, as though it came directly out of his mouth. So when Muhammad is praising Ibn Masud, he says, when he recites it, it sounds like it's coming fresh from my mouth. It's that good. It's that precise. We see that in the hadiths. We go to this hadith first. Ibn Majah 138 is where we go first. And here it is. It's a Sahih hadith. And it says, it was narrated by Abdullah ibn Masud that Abu Bakr and Umar gave him the glad tidings that the Messenger of Allah had said, whoever would like to recite the Quran as fresh as when it was revealed, let him recite it like Ibn Abd, that is Ibn Masud. That's his, aka Ibn Masud. So here you have Muhammad sitting down and saying, you want to learn the Quran? This guy is so good, Ibn Masud, he's so good that it's like almost, it's coming out fresh from my mouth. It's like coming out fresh from my mouth. Okay? Then Muhammad says, learn the recitation directly from Ibn Masud. In another hadith, in Sahih Bukhari 3808 says, Abdullah ibn Masud was mentioned before Abdullah ibn Ammar, who said that this is a man I still love, i.e. Ibn Masud was mentioned before Abdullah ibn Ammar. And they said of Ibn Masud that this is a man I still love, as I heard the Prophet saying, learn the recitation of the Quran from Abdullah ibn Masud. He said started with him. Then he talked about Salim, the freed slave of Abu Hudayfa. Then he said Mu'abid bin Jabal, and then last he said Ubay bin Kaab. So essentially this is another Sahaba testifying that Abdullah bin Masud was the king among all the four, or among the best among the best. The four are the best of best, and among them Abdullah bin Masud is the king. Muhammad had spoke about him in those kind of terms, if you want to learn the Quran. Now, Ibn Masud was one of his earliest disciples, and we are told that he was the first man to speak the Quran loudly in Mecca after the apostle, after Muhammad. That is in Ibn Ishaq's Sirat al-Rasulah, Life of Muhammad, page 141. That he was one of the earliest disciples, Ibn Masud, of Muhammad, and he was the first man to speak the Quran loudly in Mecca. Ibn Masud himself then says there is nobody who knows the Quran better than himself. That is in Bukhari 5002. Okay? By Allah, other than whom has the right to be worshipped, there is no surah revealed in Allah's book, but I know at what place it was revealed, and there is no verse revealed in Allah's book, but I know about whom it was revealed. And if I know that there is somebody who knows Allah's book better than I, and he is at a place that camels can reach, I would go to him. He says, I am the best. I know it the best. Nobody else knows it. And if I find somebody who knows it and I can reach him by camel, I'll go reach him. This is Ibn Masud now saying about himself, how good he is. What we are doing here is we are building and we are showing you that Muhammad had certain people you wanted to learn the Quran from, and that if anything you want to do with the Quran, go to them, and how these very guys were ignored by Abu Bakr and ignored by Uthman, and these guys hated what Uthman and Abu Bakr came up with on the Quran. And Uthman's Quran, that version of it, is what the Muslims today say their Quran is based on. Okay? That's what they say. Okay? So now, we're building that case. Okay? You've already had Sahaba say, you had Muhammad say, I showed you, Ibn Masud is awesome, the greatest. You had Sahaba says, yes, Ibn Masud was greatest. If you want to learn the Quran, go to him. You have Ibn Masud now saying, I am the greatest. Now, there were others to attest Masud being the best also, besides those. The very guy in those four, Umar bin Kaab, the very guy in the four, he is the one to attest. He's the one, and I'll show you that Muhammad also said he is one of the greatest narrators of the Quran. But this very guy says, yep, Masud is also the best. So among the four, his colleagues, Umar bin Kaab says Masud is the best. That is in Ahmad 175. In Ahmad 175, it's a big old hadith, but here he says, yep, somebody said that he had heard a guy, and that guy said he's the best reciter of the Quran and a narrator of the Quran. And Ubay bin Kaab, not knowing who it was being named, he says, who is this guy? How dare you say it? And then they told him it was Ibn Masud, and he said, yep, oh yeah, Ibn Masud, yeah, he is the best. That's the big hadith that it has, okay? All right, it's Musnad Ahmad 175. That's what it is. All right, let's get back to it. Now, we have Sahaba again confirms that Uthman is forcing into the Quran incorrect verses, and Ibn Masud's Quran is the real credible one. Now, we're moving and showing you that when Uthman created his Quran, he never invited Ibn Masud to it. Ibn Masud hated it. And he said, Ibn Masud himself was saying, this Quran is, he's putting stuff in there that Allah never quoted. So Ibn Masud doesn't like that guy. But Sahaba also saying that Uthman is corrupting the Quran and putting things in there that Muhammad did not teach anybody. And that is in Bukhari 4943. In Bukhari 4943 is a very famous hadith where you have a bunch of Sahabas going to a place in Iraq. And the main reciter, the chief Imam, Sheikh, Sahaba of the mosque comes running out to them, right? And says, hey, welcome and everything. And he says, hey, by the way, do you guys know about this verse? And they said, can you recite it for me? And so they have this one guy among the Sahabas who was really good. They said, oh, he'll recite it. And he recites it. And this chief of the mosque, this other Sahaba, he says, that's exactly how I heard Muhammad narrate that verse. Who did you hear this from? And they said, oh, this is Ibn Masud taught us this. And he said, you're absolutely right. But unfortunately, Uthman, his people, they are forcing a wrong narration upon us. And they're writing down a wrong narration. This is what the hadith says. Narrated by Al-Qama, I went to Sham with a group of companions of Ibn Masud. Abu Darda heard about our arrival, so he came to us and said, is there anybody among you who can recite the Quran? We replied in the affirmative. Then he asked, who's the best reciter? They pointed to me, aka Al-Qama. Then he told me to recite, so I recited the verse, by the night as it envelops, by the day as it appears in brightness, by him who created male and female. That is chapter 92, verses 1 to 3. Then Abu Darda, that's the chief of the mosque, then said to me, did you hear it like this from the mouth of your friend Abdullah bin Masud? And I said, yes. And he said, I too heard it like that from the mouth of the Prophet. So he's confirming the Prophet said the same thing Ibn Masud said. But then he says, but these people do not consider this recitation as the correct one. So this was during Uthman's time when he was compiling his own Quran. So here you have the leader of it saying, oh, the version that Ibn Masud has taught you is the exact version that I heard from Muhammad, but these are the guys, they're trying to do something completely different. Okay? So we are building a case now, guys. We're building a case where we're showing that the caliphs, Abu Bakr and Uthman, were not about the true words of Allah, the true recitations that that Muhammad gave, they were just putting in anything they wanted to. They wanted to keep these guys away from the Quran, never invite them to sit down and help in the compilation and the standardization process, because then that would mean their names would supersede the caliph's name. Everybody would recognize, oh, so and so did it, and not the king, not the caliph. So they didn't care about that. They just got a bunch of people they wanted, and they said, oh, go ahead and compile the Quran. And when they did it, you have Sahaba after Sahaba saying, what they have is incorrect. What they have is incorrect. Okay? So that was one proof. So now we have another direct Sahaba proof. We are overwhelming people with proof and evidence now. We have another direct companion of Muhammad. His name is Shaqiq, and he confirmed Muhammad heard Ibn Masud's claim and never challenged them. So Ibn Masud in front of Muhammad used to say, nobody else knows the Quran is better than me, and Muhammad never challenged him. And that you have in this hadith here, that it talks about it, okay? He says, hey, yeah, we were all sitting around, Muhammad was there, Abu Bakr made that comment. Muhammad was fine with the comment. That nobody knows it as good as Abu Bakr. Knows the Quran narration, recitation as good as that. Now remember, Ibn Masud wrote his Quran in 111 chapters, and today's Quran is 114. How is that possible? Anyways, his codex was widely used in Kufa, Iraq. Additional evidence comes from the Kufa traditions of this codex. The Kufa is, again folks, a significant city in Iraq where this codex was Ibn Masud's most popular one into the 7th century. Remember I told you there were people of Sham, Syria, and people of Iraq fighting? They were fighting over the different Qurans they had. So, what we learn out here is that Ibn Masud's Quran was not his personal copy. You will have Muslims sit down and say, oh, that's their personal copy. No. We have proof that it has permeated, in Iraq, in Kufa in Iraq. It's all over the place. All the different mosques are reading it. People have access to it. They are following Ibn Masud's Quran. So, what we have again is, as well as discussions indicating that Al-Hajjah, the governor of the Caliph of Abdul al-Malik at the turn of the 7th century, attempted to target and destroy Ibn Masud's codex, especially from Kufa. So it was widespread so much, ladies and gentlemen, that in Kufa, that the governor wanted to get rid of it later on. Here is in the book, okay, Kitab al-Masahif, page 54 to 73, you will see that, by the way, this is, Ibn Masud's long gone and dead now, right now, but they're all reading still his Quran, which is pissing off the governor of Kufa. And look at how he talks about Ibn, because he's a friend of Uthman. Okay, look how he talks about how frustrated he gets with Ibn Masud. It said, I gotta increase it more. Hold on. There we go. Maybe this will work here. Temporary. There we go. Hopefully you can see this. Okay. It says Al-Hajj, who's the governor, himself followed Ibn Zayed's tactic of provocation and implemented it with more force. He ordered that no one be allowed to lead the public prayers in Kufa unless he was an Arab. He even mocked Ibn Masud and his Quranic reading. It is reported that he said, "How I wonder about Ibn Masud. He claimed to have read the original Sorry, let me read this. Maybe I'm messing up. I messed up on the reading here. Sorry. He even mocked Ibn Masud and his Quranic reading. It is reported that he said, "How I wonder about Ibn Masud." So he's saying, "How do I?" He's wondering about Ibn Masud. Like he doesn't like him. He claimed to have read the original Quran of God. I swear by God, that is just a piece of Rajaz poetry of the Bedouin. So he said Ibn Masud's Quran is a piece of Rajaz poetry of the Bedouin. It's like piece of Bedouins are considered the lowest form of Muslims or Arabs. They're like gypsies. So he's saying Ibn Masud's Quran. When I read it, it's like a gypsy wrote it. It's garbage. Okay. Then As-Salt B. Dinar reported, I heard Al-Hajjah, the governor, saying, Ibn Masud is the chief of hypocrites. Ra al-Munafiqin, chief of hypocrites. If I had lived in the same time as his, I would have soaked the ground with his blood, is what he says. So he said, if I had lived at the time of Ibn Masud, I would have unalived him. He's calling him munafiq. All these words. This is Ibn Masud who wrote Allah's Quran, right? So he hates him so much, and then he says, I'm putting a ban on anybody reading it in what? Hold on. These punks are reporting me, no problem. I'll go down and come back again. Let me see. Uno momentos. Okay. So, you see how nervous they get when we start showing the Quran out there? Yep, they're crying. Just keep on hitting the likes and tap, 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 guys. Okay? Get the likes going in there. It's okay. So now you have this guy saying, the governor, long after Ibn Masud is dead, and his Quran is all over Kufa, Iraq, saying that, you know what, if I had got this guy, if I was alive during his time, I would have unalived him. He hates him. Okay? So, Ibn Abi Dawud, in no less than 19 pages of his Quran, let me just make this a little bit smaller here, it's too big. Okay? Ibn Abi Dawud, in no less than 19, let me make it smaller, hold on here. Let me just go to 150. There we go. Okay, all right. Ibn Abi Dawud devotes no less than 19 pages of his work on the compilation of the Quran manuscripts to the variant readings found between Ibn Masud's text and that of Zayd, which was ultimately the one that was standardized by Uthman. And he does this in Kitab al-Masahif, page 54 to 73. Okay? So, in the book Kitab al-Masahif, Ibn Abi Dawud, famous scholar, sits down and starts benchmarking the differences between Ibn Masud, who Muhammad said is the best of the best. He recites it like it came out fresh from my mouth, right? This is the guy that you need to learn the Quran from. And Zayd bin Thabit. Zayd is the one who compiled it for both Abu Bakr and Uthman, but in this case he's benchmarking it against Uthman's Quran. And he does that in Kitab al-Masahif. Spends 19 pages showing you the differences between the two. Okay? In fact, it is well known, as I said, that Ibn Masud's codex, far from being his personal use only, was widely used in the region where he was based, and just as Ubay bin Kaab's codex, or Quran, became the standard text in Syria before Uthman's recension. So Ibn Masud likewise became the standard text for Muslim Ummah in and around Kufa, Iraq. And Abi Dawud talks more about that in his Kitab al-Masayif, page 13. Okay? So, what are we seeing here? The next thing we're going to go into is now we're going to talk about Ibn Masud's codex was seized and subsequently destroyed. His personal copy of it, so it's already spread all throughout Iraq. They've already made copies of it and everybody has it. His own copy was seized and subsequently destroyed or otherwise eliminated along with non-standard copies. So Ibn Abi Dawud al-Sistani in Kitab al-Musahif, Book of Quranic Codex, page 23 to 25, and in page 170 to 119, in the standard modern Beirut edition, i.e. edited by Arthur Jeffrey, in there you have all this proof of it. And then Umar ibn Sahaba in Tariq al-Madina al-Munawahara, History of Medina, volume 3, page 999 through 1003, in Jeddah or modern, in either Jeddah or modern Beirut edition, that includes the change describing the seizure among the public dispute. Al-Suyuti talks about it. Also says that, yep, you know what? He summarizes the incident from Ibn Abi Dawud and others, noting that the collection and seizure and burning of the various copies, including Ibn Masud's copy. So they burned Ibn Masud's copy too. The famous time when Uthman burns all the copies, one of them, I'm just showing you multiple sources talking about it. One of them is Ibn Masud's copy, his personal copy. Other early Quran scribes who possessed varied codices, different kinds of Qurans, were Ubay bin Kaab, Abu Musa al-Ashhar, Maqtit ibn al-Aswad, also faced pressure to relinquish their personal manuscripts because they had written their own Quran. They had written their own Quran, their own codices. So, here is Ubay bin Kaab. Now, Ubay bin Kaab is the other one. Remember, out of the four, it was Ibn Masud is the greatest case. Here is Muhammad saying Ubay bin Kaab was the best of reciters. In Ibn Majah 154, Ubay bin Kaab was one of the four whom Muhammad singled out. He was considered the best reciter of the Quran. He was also known as Sayyidul Qura. Sayyidul Qura, the master of reciters. Umar the Caliph also agreed that Ubay was the best reciter. Ubay bin Kaab said Uthman omitted his verses that he got from Muhammad directly. Ubay bin Kaab is saying that Uthman also omits verses in his version. Umar said, Sahih Bukhari 5005. Umar said, Ubay was the best of us in recitation of the Quran, yet we leave some of what he recites. He was the best, yet we leave. That means we don't have some of the things that he recites. He's the best of the reciters out there, and we do not. That means they're leaving out Allah's verses. Ubay says, I have taken it from the mouth of Allah's messenger, and I will not leave it for anything. But Allah said, none of our revelations do we abrogate or cause to be forgotten, but we substitute with something better or similar. It's just sometimes in the hadith they start talking about something else. But there is Ubay saying that he got it directly from Muhammad. Ubay saying, effectively, any of the, he's saying that what Uthman did, he says, is that they omitted verses that he got from Muhammad. Ubay bin Kaab wrote his codex, which had 116 chapters. Ibn Masud is at 111. Ubay bin Kaab is at 116 chapters. That is crazy. Now, there are two very interesting hadiths relating to his prominence as an expert in the Quran text. The first of which reads as follows. Affan ibn Muslim informed us on the authority of Anas ibn Malik, he on the authority of the Prophet, may Allah bless him, he said, the best reader of the Quran among my people is Ubay ibn Kaab. So sometimes he's calling, Ibn Masud, the most freshest, the greatest, and then he says the same thing about Ubay ibn Kaab. As a consequence of what Muhammad said, Ubay bin Kaab became known as Sayyidul Qura, the master of readers. Umar himself, the second caliph of Islam, after, it's really not, no, he's not, what, second? Hold on a second. Oh yeah, he is second. Boy, I'm blanking off. Yes, he is the second caliph. He comes after Abu Bakr. Boy, I'm blanking off. Okay, so he is. So it said Umar himself, who Umar is the second caliph of Islam, confirmed that he was in fact the best of all Muslims in the recitation of the Quran. Sahih Bukhari says. The second hadith in this respect reads as follows. Anas bin Malik reported that Allah's messenger said to Ubay bin Kaab, I have been commanded to recite to you the surah Al-Baniyah, which opens with these words, Lam yakunal latina kafaru. He said, he has mentioned to you my name. And then he said, yes, thereupon he shed tears of joy. So they were just talking to each other. Anyways, we are not informed as to why Muhammad considered himself especially obliged to commit parts of the Quran to obey. But these two traditions do serve to show how highly regarded he was as an authority of the Quran. Now, Masud and Musa, remember the other guy was Ibn Musa? Another guy who had the Quran written out there. How is it, the question is it, so Masud and Musa, who also wrote the Quran in 114 chapters, Musa wrote it also in 114 chapters, disagreed with each other's codex. I want to ask you something, ladies and gentlemen. I want you to use your head for a second, okay? Muhammad is saying, Ibn Masud and Ubay bin Kaab, and there are other two, but we'll concentrate on these two. They're the best of best. They're the greatest of narrators. When they narrate, it sounds like it's coming freshly from somebody's mouth. I mean, these guys are just awesome. Okay? They know the Quran thoroughly. Now, when they go to write down their own codex, their own mushaf, how is it the two best students also disagree with each other? If they know the Quran that well, how is it the two people disagree? And even you throw in Ibn Musa, he's another one in there, and he disagrees with Masud. His Quran disagrees with it. How does that make sense? If you're bragging two people know the Quran absolutely great, you got to come and learn from them, and those two people are locked in a room individually and they write the Quran, and then they come out, their Qurans differ. How is that possible? I'll tell you why. You know, it's because the book is a man-made book. There's no divinity in it. It's screaming back to us. Look at that. How is it that the closest and earliest companions learned the Quran differently from the same source? The fact that they could not agree with each other or had forgotten much of what Muhammad had allegedly recited to them. Proof positive that the Quran was not perfectly preserved. All of that proves it positive. Here is the evidence. Here you have, in this book, very interesting thing. It's talking about the differences in the books. It was saying, it starts off with, we were sitting in the mosque and Abdullah was reciting the Quran when Hudayfa came in. Abdullah was Ibn Masud. When Hudayfa came in and said, the reading of Ibn Abd, which is Ibn Masud, i.e. Abdullah also called that, and the reading of Abu Musa, by God, if I am spared to reach the commander of faithful, I will recommend that he impose a single Quranic reading. So now he's come and heard Ibn Musa, and he's heard Ibn Masud's Quran, and they says, dude, they're both Sahabas, and guess what? Both their Qurans differ. And he is getting pissed off out here. And he says, by God, if I'm spared to reach the commander of the faithful, i.e. the Caliph, I will recommend that he impose a single Quran reading. Abdullah became very angry and spoke sharply to Hudayfa, who fell silent. So Hudayfa was the one who was talking, and then Abdullah gets mad. Probably probably knew that there were differences. Now it continues to say, Yazidi Muawiyah was in the mosque in the time of Al-Wahid, Al-Wahid Uqba, sitting in a group among whom was Hudayfa. So Hudayfa sitting in a group. An official called out, those who follow the reading of Ibn Musa go to the corner nearest to the kinder door. So they're in the mosque and they're saying, all you guys who want to follow the reading of Abu Musa, go to this part of the mosque. It's called the kinder door. And those who follow Abdullah ibn Masud reading, go to the corner nearest Abdullah's house. So go to this other corner of the mosque. So as you can see, they're already confessing to us that their Qurans differ. And they're separating them. Their reading of the Quran chapter 2, 196 did not agree. It's telling you what they did not agree. One group read, perform the pilgrimage to God. The other group read it as, perform the pilgrimage to the Kaaba. Hudayfa became very angry and his eyes reddened, and he rose, parting his kameez, his cloth, his waistcloth, at the wallet. Although in the mosque. So he's all mad and he got up in the mosque. This was during the reign of Uthman. Hudayfa exclaimed, will someone go to the commander of the faithful, or shall I go myself? This is what happened in the previous dispensations. He came over and sat down, saying, God sent Muhammad, who with those who went forward fought those who went back until God gave victory to his religion. God took Muhammad and Islam and made strides. On and on and on and on and on. Okay? So it's kind of deviated into another topic on the bottom half. So what I wanted to show you is that, look, in their mosque, Ibn Masud is sitting out there and Ibn Musa is sitting out there, and they're separating the people. Is whoever wants to listen to this one, go to this side. Whoever wants to listen to the other fellow, go to the other side. And you have Hudayfa who's getting so mad that they are reciting two different versions, because he says, look, in Quran chapter 2, 196, one says, and this is legalistic, this is salvation, this is risking their salvation. It says, one group said, perform pilgrimage to God. And the others read, perform the pilgrimage to the Kaaba. So which one is it? Do you just do it to God, or do you have to go to the Kaaba? That creates a huge issue. That's why he got very agitated, that these guys are writing all different things. So, we have so far showed you a whole bunch of evidence that Muhammad, number one, never wanted the Quran to be put into a single book. Number two, he said if you're going to learn the Quran, you learn it from these four guys. And among the four guys, number three, he talks about Ubay bin Kaab, and he talks about Ibn Masud as being the best of the best. Then he has a, we show you that Uthman never invites these guys when they are, Uthman is doing his standardization and compilation. In fact, he burns Ibn Masud's copy. We also showed you that even Ubay bin Kaab, he doesn't invite him. They all ignore him. They create their own committee. They ignore Muhammad's telling that these two are the best of the best if you want to learn the Quran from. They ignore it because it's a political process. Then we also saw The irony that even among the Sahaba, among the four, they differed in their books among each other. We have this famous saying that says, Zir ibn Hubaysh reported, Ubay bin Kaab said to me, what is the extent of Surat al-Azab? I said 70 or 73 verses. He said, yet it used to be equal to Surat al-Baqarah, and in it we recited the verse of stoning. I said, and what is the verse of stoning? He replied, the fornicators among the married men and married women. Stone them as an exemplary punishment from Allah, and Allah is mighty and wise. Why is he frantic to, tell us about these differences of verses out here? Here, what we're learning is he's telling you that their verse, a chapter used to be almost 274 verses, and today it's only 70 verses. Ubay bin Kaab is telling you that. What happened to the rest? We continue to read. Ibn Abi Maryam's related to us from Ibn Lula, from Aisha, who read, Surat al-Azab used to be recited in the time of the Prophet with 200 verses. But when Uthman wrote out the codices, he was unable to procure more of it than there is in it today. And he writes this in Abu Ubaid's Kitab Fadil al-Quran. In his book, he's saying, Aisha saying that it used to be 200 plus verses, but what you have right now is because he couldn't find the rest of it. So the Quran is missing over 210 verses. This is crazy. Ishmael ibn Abraham and Ishmael bin Jafar related to us from Al-Mubarak bi Fadwa, from blah 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 blah. Najud from Zahir bin Hubaysh, who said, Ubay bin Kaab said, O Zir, how many verses did you count, or how many verses did you read in Surat Al-Azhab? 72 or 73? And I answered, and he said, yet it used to be equal to Surat Al-Baqarah, and we used to read it in the verse of stoning. So here, another source sitting down saying 200 and some verses are missing. This is crazy. We continue. The missing verse of Rajam, which seems was in the Al-Haz. It says, Allah sent Muhammad with the truth and revealed the holy book to him, and among what Allah revealed was the verse of Rajam, or the stoning of the married persons, male and female, and who had committed adultery, stoning verses. And we did recite this verse and understood and memorized it. Allah's apostle did carry out the punishment of stoning, and so did we after him. After him. I'm afraid that after a long time had passed, somebody will say, by Allah, we don't find the verse of Rajam or stoning in Allah's book, and thus they will go astray by leaving an obligation which Allah has revealed. That's Sahih Bukhari, volume 8, page 539. On and on and on and on and on. Missing verses of the suckling, stoning, suckling, all this stuff. All of this, yet somehow Muslims keep convincing themselves and trying to convince others of the perfect preservation of the Quran. So, again, we have walked you through who Muhammad liked. We've walked you through how the Sahaba said they were the greatest of the reciters and narrators. We walked you through how they were hated by Uthman, never invited by Uthman. We walked you through evidence where they burnt their copies. We walked you through where it's not their personal copy of Ubay bin Kaab and Ibn Masud. Rather, this copy is permeated all through Syria and in Iraq. It's being used all across by various mosques and various people. So it's not his personal copy or something like that. Right? So, we walked you through all of these things. We walked you through also where the Sahaba say Uthman is writing stuff in the book that's really not from God. We didn't even hear it from Allah. Ultimately, the question has to be asked, is this not proof that this is a political book and it's a it's a political book and a book written for um, war, power, money, smecks, carnal pleasures, slavery, etc., etc. That's what it's written about. Okay? So hopefully you guys have learned a little bit about the original Quran. There's a lot more in here, folks, but I don't want to overwhelm you guys with it. I just want you to understand who were the top four guys, who were the top two of the four guys, did they differ from each other, what the hell happened? And give you a few choice quotes. By the way, here's the hadith too, Sahih Muslim 1050. We used to recite a surah which resembled in length and severity of Surah Barat, and I have, however, forgotten it with the exception of this which I remember, yada yada yada. We used to have it. What I have next for you is that there are differences between Ibn Masud and Zayd's Quran. That's all of this stuff here. But we'll hold off on that. We'll hold off on it. I think that's been a long session. Hopefully you guys have enjoyed it. Hopefully you guys have understood a little bit about it. Hopefully you've sat down and seen like how they ignored the best of the best. They created their own book. Why? Why did they ignore him? Why did they not invite Abu Bakr? Why does the Sahaba say that Uthman's codex contains rubbish, many falsities? Why does all your scholarship say that you're missing over 210 verses? Why? And that's the question we ask the Muslims.